You're staring at your phone right now, a pocket-sized supercomputer that tracks satellites, predicts weather patterns, and calculates planetary orbits in real time. Modern engineers spent decades and billions of dollars perfecting that technology. Yet more than 2,000 years ago, someone in the ancient Mediterranean built a hand-cranked bronze device that did almost exactly the same thing, tracking the sun, moon, and planets with gears so precise they still amaze today's watchmakers. How is this possible? That single contradiction is just the beginning. Across deserts, mountains, and forgotten libraries lie artifacts and structures that refuse to fit the neat story we tell about human progress. They were built with tools we can barely imagine, by people history books say shouldn't have had the knowledge or organization. Scholars study them, measure them, debate them in journals, but the deeper you look, the more the official timeline starts to crack. These aren't myths or wild theories. They're real places, real objects with exact dates, exact dimensions, and names attached. And they keep asking the same uncomfortable question. What did our ancestors actually know that we've forgotten? Stay with me. In the next few minutes, you're going to meet 5 of the most stubborn mysteries scholars still can't fully explain, because admitting how little we understand would force us to rewrite too much of what we think we know about civilization itself. The scale is staggering. These puzzles stretch from the hills of Turkey 11,000 years ago to a shipwreck off Greece, from the bone-dry plains of Peru to a mysterious manuscript that has defeated codebreakers for centuries. They involve engineering that rivals today's heavy machinery, knowledge of the stars that matches modern astronomy, and writings that look like language but refuse to speak. You'll see stone temples built before farming existed, a mechanical computer older than the Roman Empire, geoglyphs so huge they only make sense from the air, an unreadable book filled with impossible plants, and clay jars that may have generated electricity long before Benjamin Franklin. Think about this. If these things are real, and every measurement, every carbon date, every peer-reviewed paper confirms they are, then human history is far less linear than we were taught. Now imagine what else might be hiding in plain sight. Let's step into the first one. In 1994, high in the Gürmisch Mountains of southeastern Turkey, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt stood on a dusty hill that locals had long called a place of broken stones. He had come looking for something smaller, but the moment he cleared a little dirt, he knew he had found something enormous. What he uncovered was Göbekli Tepe, circles of massive T-shaped limestone pillars carved by people who had no metal tools, no wheels, and no agriculture. Each enclosure holds a dozen or more pillars, the tallest rising 5.5 meters and weighing several tons. The stones were quarried hundreds of meters away, shaped with flint chisels, and dragged into perfect rings. Schmidt's team later dated the site to around 9600 BCE, 11,500 years ago. That's before anyone was supposed to be building anything permanent. The engineering insight is simple but brilliant. The pillars lean inward slightly, supporting each other like a stone roof that never quite closes, creating a space that feels both open and enclosed. But here's the problem. According to every textbook, complex architecture only appears after humans settle down and farm. These builders were still hunter-gatherers, moving across the landscape following game. Modern engineers still struggle to organize volunteer crews of that size without supply chains or written plans. Even today, replicating the precision cuts and alignments using only stone hammers would take teams of specialists months. Now imagine those hunter-gatherers deciding, year after year, to leave their families, haul multi-ton stones uphill, and carve foxes, boars, and scorpions into them. Perhaps for rituals, perhaps to bind scattered groups together in a world still recovering from the last ice age. They took enormous risks with their time and their survival. So how did they actually coordinate thousands of people across generations without a single written record? And why, centuries later, did they carefully bury the entire complex under tons of earth as if hiding it from the future?
But Göbekli Tepe is only the first crack in the timeline. Fast forward to 1901. Sponge divers sheltering from a storm off the Greek island of Antikythera spot a shipwreck 70 meters down. Among the marble statues and bronze fragments they bring up, is a corroded lump the size of a shoebox. Decades later, X-rays reveal it contains at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, the Antikythera mechanism. The largest gear alone measures 13 centimeters across, with 223 teeth. The whole device, once housed in a wooden case about 34 by 18 by 9 centimeters, could predict solar and lunar eclipses decades in advance, track the irregular motion of the moon, and display the positions of the sun and 5 known planets against the zodiac. Turn the crank, and the heavens move in perfect sync. The technical insight is astonishing. It uses a differential gear, something we thought was invented in the 16th century, to model the moon's elliptical orbit. But this is where it gets strange. The mechanism dates to around 100 BCE, a time when the Greeks had advanced math, but no evidence of geared technology on this level anywhere else. Impossibility factor? No other geared device of comparable complexity appears in the archaeological record for another 1,000 years. Even today, master watchmakers study replicas and admit the tolerances are tighter than many modern clocks. Modern engineers still struggle to explain how the knowledge was transmitted or why it seems to have vanished. Think about this. Someone on that doomed ship carried what was essentially the world's first analog computer, a device that turned abstract astronomy into something you could hold in your hands. Was it made for a wealthy scholar, a navigator, or a temple priest? We may never know. The wreck itself claimed the lives of the crew in a violent storm. So how did ancient craftsmen achieve clockwork precision that would not be matched until the Renaissance and then lose the skill entirely? Let's travel now to the bone-dry Nazca Desert of southern Peru. In 1927, Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Mejia Cespe was hiking through the foothills when he looked down and realized the faint lines crisscrossing the plain were not natural. From the ground, they look like random paths, but from the air, they become giant drawings, hundreds of them. The Nazca lines, created between 500 BCE and 500 CE by a pre-Inca people, stretch across 200 square kilometers. Some are straight for dozens of kilometers. Others form animals, plants, and geometric shapes up to 200 meters long. The lines were made by removing the top layer of reddish gravel to reveal lighter soil beneath, just a few centimeters deep. Yet, the figures remain perfectly proportioned even when viewed from space. The engineering insight is elegant. The Nazca used simple surveying stakes and ropes to maintain straight lines over vast distances, and they chose the desert's natural varnish so the contrast would last thousands of years. But here's the impossibility factor. Without aircraft or hot air balloons, which they didn't have, how did they plan and execute images that only resolve at altitude? Modern engineers still struggle to explain how the accuracy was replicated over such scale, using only ground-based methods. Even today, surveyors with GPS and drones occasionally misalign large-scale projects by centimeters. Now imagine the human stakes. These were not idle artists. The lines cross a harsh landscape where water is life and death. Some researchers believe they marked underground aquifers or pilgrimage routes. Others see ritual paths walked during ceremonies. Families, entire communities devoted generations to scraping gravel under the burning sun, knowing a single mistake would ruin a figure visible for miles. The risk was real. Drought could wipe out their crops, yet they kept creating. So why invest that much effort in art no one on the ground could fully appreciate? And why did the practice stop so abruptly around 500 CE?
Half a world away, in 1912, a Polish book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich bought a strange manuscript from a Jesuit college in Italy. The Voynich manuscript is a small vellum book measuring 23.5 by 16.2 by 5 centimeters, containing around 240 pages of dense flowing script that no one has ever deciphered.
The pages are filled with colorful illustrations of unknown plants, astronomical diagrams, biological scenes that look like dissected bodies, and strange circular charts. Carbon dating places the vellum between 1404 and 1438. The writing flows left to right in what appears to be paragraphs, yet every statistical test shows it behaves like real language. Entropy, word lengths, repetition patterns, while resisting every code-breaking attempt, including modern AI. The technical insight is subtle. Whoever created it used at least 14 calf skins prepared with extraordinary care, and the ink and pigments match 15th century European recipes. But the impossibility factor remains absolute. Linguists, cryptographers, and computer scientists have thrown supercomputers at it for decades and still cannot read a single sentence. Even today, the best decryption software fails where simple substitution ciphers should work. Modern codebreakers still struggle to crack messages from World War II with far less data. Think about this. The person who made this book invested hundreds of hours in a private language and a private encyclopedia of plants that don't exist anywhere else on Earth. Was it a herbalist's notebook, an alchemist's treatise, or something meant only for one pair of eyes? The human story carries real stakes. Ownership passed through kings, scholars, and spies, each hoping it held forbidden knowledge. One owner even wrote a desperate letter in 1665 begging a famous Jesuit to translate it. So why has this one book defeated every mind that has touched it for 600 years? Finally, in 1936, workers digging near the village of Hujut Rabu outside Baghdad uncovered a curious clay jar. Austrian archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig, examining it at the National Museum of Iraq 2 years later, realized he was looking at something impossible. The Baghdad battery stands about 15 centimeters tall. Inside is a copper cylinder 9 centimeters high, sealed with asphalt, and an iron rod suspended in the center. When modern replicas are filled with an electrolyte like vinegar or grape juice, they produce up to 1 volt of electricity. The technical insight is straightforward. It functions exactly like a galvanic cell, the same principle behind every battery since the 19th century. But here's the problem. The artifact dates to the Parthian or early Sassanid period, roughly 250 BCE to 640 CE. More than 1,000 years before the first documented electric cells. Impossibility factor? No ancient texts mention electricity, yet multiple similar jars have now been found. Modern engineers still struggle to explain why anyone would need a steady, low-voltage current in the ancient world, perhaps for electroplating gold onto silver jewelry, or for ritual sensations, or even medical purposes. Even today, replicating the exact corrosion patterns and output with period materials requires careful laboratory control. Now imagine the human element. In a world of swords and oil lamps, someone deliberately assembled these components, sealed them, and used them for a purpose that required consistent power. Was it a craftsman perfecting metalwork, a healer treating pain, or a priest creating a divine spark? The risk was real. Acid leaks, failed experiments, wasted materials in a resource-scarce empire. So why build something so advanced that its very existence forces us to question what other quiet technologies were humming in the background of daily ancient life? These 5 mysteries, Göbekli Tepe's buried temples, the Antikythera mechanism's silent gears, the Nazca Line's invisible blueprints, the Voynich manuscript's locked pages, and the Baghdad battery's hidden spark, share one deeper truth. Human progress has never been a straight line climbing steadily upward. It has been circles, leaps, and sometimes deliberate burials of knowledge. Civilizations rose, mastered skills we still cannot match, then faded or chose to forget. Perhaps cataclysms erased the teachers. Perhaps the knowledge was guarded so tightly it died with its keepers. Or perhaps we simply stopped asking the right questions. The most humbling part is this: every measurement, Every carbon date, every careful excavation tells us our ancestors were capable of far more than we once believed. They organized thousands without kings, calculated the heavens without telescopes, and encoded ideas without computers. So the real mystery isn't whether they could do these things, it's how much else they achieved that we haven't yet found. What forgotten skill is waiting under the next hill, inside the next shipwreck, or between the lines of the next undeciphered page? The answer, as always, begins with the courage to look again, and the honesty to admit we still don't fully understand.